Welcome to Dilki Recipes on your favorite social media platform. Hi, I'm Dr. Sheeza Mohsin, executive coach, relationship expert, and your coach in this virtual space to support you and your Desi family in America. If you identify as being a person of color, a minority, and having some form of bicultural identity, a major goal of putting this information out is to help you realize you're not alone in this journey. If you identify as a Desi with cultural roots in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and surrounding areas, trying to meet your life and relationship needs and desires while embracing some beautiful elements of your cultural heritage, Dilki Recipes is for you. If you don't identify as a Desi, but have a warm, loving, human being kind of disposition and you want to better yourself, I think you'll find some good stuff in here as well. So let's go on with the show. Welcome to Dilki Recipes episode, and I am so excited, even though we're going to be talking about a heavy topic, about this conversation with my guest, who is the wonderful, wonderful Dr. Asra Khan. Asra, welcome to the podcast. And I'm so grateful that you took time out to be here.
Thank you so much, Sheeza. Or can I call you Dr. Sheeza Mohsin? It's such an honor to be part of this podcast. When you had asked me, I felt it's such an important topic, and you are my go-to. We often discuss cases. We often discuss what do we do. We share sort of our different experiences. And you certainly have such a wealth of information. The way that you describe the issues, the problems, how to sort of contextualize things is just incredibly helpful. So I felt, yes, let's do this. Let's try to bring some awareness to the topic. Just after recently having two of my kids, or my only kids, getting married, the things that maybe I faced as a parent and then also as a clinician, I think that would be helpful because these issues are ever present. I think it's important that we talk about it. So thank you again, Sheeza. You're amazing.
I am just so grateful, Asra, because we have talked in our clinical settings about collaborations and the challenges that our community faces. So before we delve into the topic, I just want to brag about you a little bit. Asra, you have a PhD in counseling psychology, a very positive systemic approach where you have worked with so many different institutions. I'm referring to you all the time for psych assessments and that psychology perspective, which is so important, especially as it relates to learning differences and abilities and how open you are in supporting our community. And of course, you've been faculty, you've taught college, you have taught in the clinical space, and needless to say that, both of us have a common shared love, and you have given so much more in that space of philanthropy as well as volunteering your time in community services, because mental health is such a critical area that is under supported, especially in the South Asian community. I have learned from you in that space of supporting the community. I love how you have pulled me in to help wherever I can, but your passion for making sure that every segment of our community gets the help they needed is just so beautiful. And I admire you so much, Asra.
Oh, Sheeza, thank you so much.
If you are listening, you have probably guessed that we're going to be talking about the challenges around marriage from inception to the difficult decision to consider divorce. One of the many reasons for bringing this up is a lot of times our community is very underinformed and not exposed, and probably hurting and isolating as they are going through difficult stages in marriage. It is very noticeable now, Asra, that our community also has a very high rate of divorce at every stage. And so you and I have brainstormed the idea of really starting to understand. So our community has hopefully people who are about to make these decisions or in those situations can have some more clarity on the topic. We're having a conversation right before this recording where you were mentioning that it starts at that premarital stage. So what we're going to talk about today is the whole challenge of marriage. What people are facing from the younger couples to the mature ones, and then what are some things to be considered and thought about that can help us in that decision, in all those from easy to difficult decisions, and also some patterns that we're seeing. Let's start with the premarital phase. Tell me what your thoughts are, what your perspective is in that space.
Sheeza, when I think about this topic, I've always thought that there's something that we're lacking, in particular with South Asian community, i.e. the broader community, maybe Islamic Muslim community. One of those things is the topic of learning how to communicate, how to express our needs, learning to be open in dialogue, and talk about important things like relationships. It's very much void in our community, and you might agree to that. When I was growing up, I know that it was sort of something hardly ever talked about. I think it has changed in many ways, but there's still gaps. There's still things that we do not face as a community. One, you might recall the messages that, oh, you shouldn't be talking to the opposite gender. Oh, this is haram. Or what if somebody sees you? And if you talk too much to that certain person from the opposite gender and all of that, your reputation will be scarred, etc., etc. It just creates a challenging situation for our young people because there's such a focus now on education. Maybe you're Islamic deen growing up. And then when it comes to the sort of the marital age, there's a sort of a loss. Well, we don't know what to say. We don't know how to talk. Who do we like? What kinds of people? We don't know. This is what I have seen from what young people speak. Now, it's tough to find someone that is a good match. Here's the reason. I think some of the problems, one is a difficulty in communication. Another, which we can really focus on, unrealistic expectations. Right, Sheeza? This whole age of digital media, social media, I think that needs a couple of different sessions to talk about. But in particular, I've seen a huge focus and problems that have risen from that whole area. Why? Because it creates so much self-reflection, self-doubt when you're looking at things that you think are happening with other couples. And then you question yourself, I want someone that has this. And you know, the reality is that's very unlikely. Where we don't focus in is how we are. How have we matured emotionally? What do we bring to the table? Those are the areas that I have noticed also that are one of the variables that can lead to a lot of problems within the marriage itself later on. So
I'm loving what I'm hearing, Asra, and I'm going to divide this into two because you're talking about two very important things, and I want to spend at least a little bit of time on each one. One is that whole partner selection and why our community is at a disadvantage. There's so much segregation in our socializing these young girls and boys, whether it's for cultural reasons, for religious reasons, that by the time they're of marriageable age, one, they have no frame of reference. You know, it's like when you go to an all girls or all boys school versus when you are in a mixed school, your emotional, relational intelligence is limited when you have limited exposure to that gender, right? Because we don't openly endorse the idea of dating, which I'm not saying needs to be, but then to your point, the communication skills in partner selection become so obvious when they are not as good. So while there could be two very compatible people, they don't know how to communicate with each other and even understand if they're a good fit because they don't know how to talk. They don't know how to navigate that space for finding that partner, for finding the person. And all of that requires a certain level of conversation, of dialogue, emotional intelligence, and so much more that's required. Then the second one that you're talking about, because we're talking about marital strain, is this comparison culture. So now we have social media, and now we have everybody comparing, starts early on, comparing the weddings, comparing the events, comparing the partners. Consumption of social media when you're vulnerable facilitates the production and perpetuates rather mental health issues, depression, anxiety, all of that. It doesn't make you feel good when you're comparing. Where do you think our community goes wrong in educating our girls and boys on what to expect from marriage? Real marriage is very different from this performative marriage that is shown on social media.
when I work with couples also. Just reminding them the importance of what a relationship might look like. And remember, a lot of young couples don't have a healthy framework to look at. Many of our parents have not been coached in what a healthy relationship looks like, what the needs are. A lot of them have gotten together because of, again, cultural expectations or things that happen. But the idea of knowing what a healthy communication style looks like is kind of devoid. So, first of all, just kind of swinging back and understanding what their level of understanding about communication style is. That's one thing. The other thing is there's not been a focus on one's individual mental health growth, confidence. Two people coming together are well-rounded. I love this word, emotionally intelligent, emotionally mature, coming together and creating a relationship. I think what has happened is there's this expectation that one person will fill the role of another person. And so they're half and half basically coming together to make a whole. That theme needs to be really challenged. I think the focus should be set back on really developing healthy, confident, emotionally mature individuals as the precursor before getting into a marriage. Because as we look at the divorce rate, you can always swing back and pinpoint some emotional immaturity, some lack of understanding. All of these needs, all of these things have been there, right? So go ahead now. You go ahead because I kept.
I am so excited because I'm like, oh, I have so much coming up for me as you're articulating this so well. You nailed it. Because this is one thing that I see that is so unhealthy in terms of even the cultural expectations, that two halves will complete each other. For example, oh, he's not very social. He doesn't have a social life. Let's just get him married off to somebody who's very social. Well, can you imagine how disappointing for that social girl to have a partner who doesn't know how to engage, who doesn't know how to do something she's so good at?
Yes.
And or be willing, and if that person is not emotionally mature, to celebrate her being social, then the negativity starts, because then you are making each other feel bad. And if they haven't worked on themselves, the presence of that strength in one partner can amplify the absence of it in another, and there you have it, a classic couples conflict. Culturally, there was this whole notion that, if there's a problem, shadi kar do. Like, I'm sure you've heard it, and I would love for you to finish my statement. The moment they have marital problems, have a kid. And, it's like, we'll just give you some distractions that'll fatigue you. So by the end of it, you're just settled. Initially, when people used to ask me that, the South Asian community has a lower divorce rate, and I used to laugh and say, you know what? Yes, we have a lower divorce rate, but we also, our miserable marriage rate is very high because
What a concept. No, that's, I love the way you said it, but because that's not an indication. Just because you've been able to succeed or successfully keep a marriage does not indicate the health of the marriage. You're absolutely correct.
one other dynamic that's leading up to, some of the divorces, which may be warranted in some cases, is the changes in our community, right? Women are becoming more empowered, educated, they're economically independent. In the olden days, a lot of times women stayed in difficult marriages because there was no economic support they had, maybe from their family of origin or themselves, because they were not as educated. Now, women are educated. They do not need men to provide for them necessarily. And so they're looking for emotional intelligence skills in men. The needs have changed. That's really not a thing. So now men also, from our young men and even older men, the requirements have changed. Before, income generation was enough. Now it isn't. And I'm wondering if you've noticed some of that.
Yes, for sure. I think definitely, especially again in young people, I've noticed a trend. The women, the young girls, are the ones who are actually more educated, more capable, getting these really great jobs. And our young men are struggling a little bit. I don't know. I've just noticed it a little bit more, which certainly adds to the dynamic, because one, young girls, good for them, would like to meet people that are equal, or if not above. And it's really impacting the social pool because men are just not quite reaching that. So you have a number of very well-educated young women, not so well-educated young men. And so I have noticed that, and you may feel the same. That's one thing. Now, older women who are coming into sessions that are having some marital or relationship troubles, these women may be highly educated, working, and not able to sort of separate the fact that they are capable if they were not in this relationship. It still navigates around my husband creates the dynamic for my success. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but it's almost like they cannot see themselves be successful outside the context of a marital relationship.
I see where you're coming from, and I think that it is so interesting and so true. So the older women, I will say the Gen Xers or even late boomers, one of the cultural loyalties we have is that marriage gives you that social currency, right?
Yeah.
It's your ticket to your social life because married people socialize with married people. There is still a lot of stigma of socializing with somebody who may be divorced or maybe separated or and so forth. So there's that. For a woman in that stage to see her identity and her worth in her career, in her self-confidence is very difficult. We were given the rubric in that space to say, okay, married is a big thing. You could have the highest degree, you could have the most robust career, but it is not unless you're married that you have a place or a seat at the table. So that's definitely something showing up. 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was no problem in a very, very accomplished man, very successful financially, doing really well for themselves, marrying a very simple woman who has basic education, is a good human being, and not as advanced in their career or anything, right? And the marriage was okay and acceptable. There was also no problem in a man marrying a woman who is 10, 15 plus years younger than them because that was totally fine. It makes me sad, and I think it's going to take some time, and it's going to take you and I and many others talking about it to normalize it, that I personally think it's beautiful when accomplished women are not looking at a resume to match their partnership. They're looking for a good human being that they can build a life with, and that they are not judged like they just settled because this person is not high achieving. She is not looking for somebody to give a job to. She's looking for somebody to build a life with. And if she is financially accomplished, it should be, and our community needs to open up to being okay with the boys. There are seasons to all of these things, but at the end of the day, you don't want to find, yes, you want to find those compatibility elements, make a difference, but you want to be that person. And being that person, if you have a resume and a degree, doesn't mean you'll be a great partner. You have to be a loving partner. You have to take care of each other. You have to be there through thick and thin, through employment and unemployment. That unfair judgment on the girl to not have somebody her equal when that has never been a condition for men, I find very interesting from our culture perspective.
It's one of those factors that tend to prevent, again, capable young women from choosing a partner who exactly fits all the qualities, is a good, loving human being, but somehow we've associated degree, financial earning power to a man's personality, which is a very sad phenomenon. Not only does it raise concern, it creates such a negative self-worth dynamic in our young men that I feel so sad of. So I've seen young women pass by very capable partners because of this very reason. And I'm so glad that you're speaking about it. I think there should absolutely, I feel that there should be a community effort to promote relationships that are healthy on all dynamics and levels, and we can slowly move away from status, degree, all of these things that make sense in the day-to-day life of a couple.
Thank you. Thank you for your endorsement of the idea. I feel that it's so important for us to talk about it because I see the match of maybe the professions are matching, but I see
Yeah.
a lot of misery. And then I see one person or a girl with a very intense, demanding, successful career married to a wonderful person who can be there for her, who
Yeah.
can really make a beautiful equation in building a life together. Couples are now smart to make those family decisions. So if somebody's planning to stay home or taking a back seat in their career, you're making a choice based on smartness. Okay, if somebody's making more money, maybe they need to go to work, and maybe the person making less money can stay home because both of them are engaged in a partnership. They're
Sure.
not saying this is a gender based role. I really feel that our community needs to catch up with that. Same
Yeah.
goes for age difference. I'm coming across all these relationships where the boy is younger, or men have gotten married to younger women forever, and now if
Mm.
girls are, and if the newer generation is more emotionally mature, and this girl who's very competent is looking for a this person, and age is just a number, they're looking for emotional maturity, compatibility, then why not? And why
Oh,
are we busy judging and making all those comments? And those are elements of our community that we really need to start working on
no,
discouraging.
absolutely. No, those are great points. Definitely great points. When we think about marriages, let's say, that come in that are not doing well, there are things, for example, what we might refer to as clear reasons for exit and reasons that you want to promote and help couples to work on that have sustainability. I wonder if you could share a little bit, in your practice, what have you seen that are sure shot, we call it sure shot exit strategies that versus
That
the other?
that is such a great question. In most, if not all situations, my usual answer is that it depends on so many things. But
Yeah.
there are some criteria that really qualify that an exit might be the best decision. Of course, the first one that is not alien to us is safety. So if
Yeah.
there is physical abuse, if there is violence in the relationship and very, very coercive control, whether it's the violence and the control is physical, sexual, emotional, financial. A lot of times people don't notice that. It
Yeah.
can be claustrophobic. It can absolutely mentally distress a partner. And those are sure shot exit situations in their intensity. I work with these couples a lot, and most of them actually repair around infidelity. Just like there are lots of marriages, infidelity also has lots of variations. So, most innocent infidelity situations are repaired beautifully. And the relationship, once is genuine interest in repairing them, it is just very beautiful. The couple is so committed because, it was a mistake that was realized. What does become something that becomes a sure shot exit is what is called like serial betrayal. So this
Mm.
is happening with zero accountability. It keeps happening over and over again. And that is a betrayal. And it could be infidelity, it could be emotional affairs that keep popping up, the mental stress on the partner. And here, I just want to caveat that because a lot of people think, okay, well, it's the man. Yes, a lot of times it is, but sometimes it's the woman also. So it's very important for a partner to really maintain their mental health, and sometimes exit is the only way. The third one that becomes a sure shot exit is
Mm.
substance abuse, severe substance abuse.
Yeah.
Because living with a person who's refusing to own their diagnosis, who's refusing to work on themselves, whether it is drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's gambling, porn, gaming, whatever it is. But if the person is not owning it and not repairing it, then sometimes exit is the best way. Then of course, just chronic deception. Now, what do I mean by that? Around money, around manipulation, around trust breaking, anything that is continuously violating trust and presenting manipulative and controlling and really stripping a partner out of their self-worth, isolating them from their loved ones, requires a very strong consideration for exit.
That is, the way that you framed it, so important to pay attention to. Now, with that said, I wonder if we can bridge this towards back in the beginning. Do you think these issues are things that would come up, let's say, in a premarital situation? And how important do you think it would be to identify sort of a feel of that and get a sense of it before moving forward? I wonder if you could speak to that.
One of the things that I notice in our culture, which is like, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes families get so fixated on finding a person they haven't done homework in getting to know, getting to understand the family, really understanding dynamics, and then they get hyper focused on the wedding. So they are really not noticing all the orange, yellow, red flags showing up in all colors in that premarital stage. But now there is the wedding pressure. It's the pressure that we've invited hundreds of people, everybody knows. And actually, I see these marriages going through that I know from day one were not the best fit to begin with. And I'm wondering if you have perspective on it, because I feel like the overemphasis on the wedding party, it just becomes so much. It's so funny. I spoke to it was a small group that organized about women who had to get a divorce very early on in their marriages. One of them said, I'm so relieved. It was a check mark for my parents, and now I have my freedom. And it just broke my heart just to get your freedom, because they were harassed. I have a job. I can live my life now because I've done and I was like, oh my goodness, that was a bad decision to begin with. That could have been. So I'm wondering what your perspective is, Asra, because this is a critical thing for us to bring attention to.
Yes, I think it's so important that you've brought it up. And it's definitely a community concern of how we talk about doing that due diligence in the beginning. If you can imagine, I've heard many community members sort of have a 1, 2, 3 criteria. And that criteria is so limited, and it's almost as if either partner needs to just go for it because, oh, one, they have a job, or they're reasonably attractive, or the family looks nice. There's no really outward reason why you should not pursue this. And then there's conversation about, well, don't be so picky. You're not going to get anybody perfect. And that builds onto the level of pressure and emotional sort of manipulation on either part. So you're right. Oftentimes it's skipped over, and the focus is now on all the wonderful things that'll happen in the wedding itself. The problem is that's a 1 or 2 day thing. And after that, I think is where the problem starts. So the focus absolutely needs to shift. I think pre-marriage, absolutely due diligence. Go, have some sessions of premarital therapy, mix with the family members, get an idea of how functioning occurs. All of that needs to happen before even pursuing forward. All of this needs to be a focus there. And the marriage, yes, have fun, enjoy, spend time on it, but the real work comes after. And that is really a message that we need to be able to talk to young people as well as people in their marriage, that have been a couple years.
Absolutely, Asra. I'm launching a webinar called Finding the One. And what I talk about in that space is just the whole idea of telling each other, when you are truly vested in getting to know the person, that let's really give this a try for 6 to 9 months to get to know each other with the understanding, respectful understanding that at the end of it, you can say, thank you, but this is not a good fit. And I can say the same, but we really give it our all. And actually, instead of half-assing the effort and not showing ourselves, because that's when you find critical elements, and there are lots of them, but I'll give an example of one: family involvement, parents, in-laws, like just understanding how that looks like for each person. And what is to your point, expectation that if we decide to do this, how is that going to show up in our life every day? Who's going to be involved? Where are we going to be spending the holidays? How do we come up with a fair formula? Who is more intrusive? And all of that, because in our culture, there's beautiful things, lots of support, but then there's intrusive stuff too.
Oh, I think that's such an important statement that you're making, because you're right. We are a collectivist culture. And oftentimes, marriage is not just seen as sort of a personal choice, but as a family or a community alliance, if you will. And so, just having a conversation about that, I think the idea of telling someone or sharing the idea that don't worry, it'll all be fine once you're married, the family will come around, or etc., etc. That's not a good service, because I think the reality is that we do move in a network, if you will, and we do feed off of that, what you call collectivist culture, our reputation within an entire family network. It's important, no matter how much we wish to deny it, it is there. And so, again, it's a disservice to pretend it's not. When you think about it in the therapeutic sense, that's why it's often important, for example, you who understand the cultural background, or somebody who can really relate to that, it's important to get that perspective, because I've also seen young couples go to non sort of culture oriented therapists, and that doesn't even become an issue, because it's really just about the couple. I'm not saying that Western oriented therapists can't do that. No, they often are trained. Hopefully they will. But it is important to have that discussion and to recognize the importance within our own South Asian, or if you will, Muslim culture, that we are that culture, the collectivist culture, and it will matter.
And then also the whole idea, like you said, going to a non-multicultural oriented therapist who will dismiss a family value to say, you know what, just focus on yourselves. It takes a village. A lot of times I notice my couples in distress when they don't have a support system. Because in this new modality, you're expecting your partner to be your best friend, soulmate, companion for hobbies, everything, 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 and more. That's too much pressure. A lot of the successful marriages, one of the ingredients you see is balance, that you are not just heavily depending on just each other. You are complete, like you said so beautifully earlier on. You're complete in yourself. You're just not that neediness, because you're a wonderful partner when you can regulate your own emotions. Yes, of course, you can lean on each other, but not all the time.
Not all the time. I think that's such a great point. I often tell young people that it's very important that you have healthy outlets, a friend group that you go out and share activities with. Oftentimes the couple's so into each other that they can't do anything without each other. Not healthy, because again, you're two individual people coming together. So you should have had, or it would benefit for you to have those other hobbies, other friend groups that you can spend time with, and then come back to your partner in those times when you need to. So, very important.
It just makes such a rich relationship when you both have experiences. Then you come back to. I have a friend who had mentioned this, and very funny person, that steak could be the best kind of food, but if you have to have it every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, eventually you get sick of it. So having that variety of experiences with friends, with family, having some balance, bringing back stories to your relationship to say, oh, I had such a good time. The more relevant, interesting, informed, and excited you are, the better the quality of the person in the relationship. If you are just busy trying to be possessive and controlling of your partner, that really doesn't make that healthy relationship. And that dynamic definitely causes eventual fatigue, which perpetuates those exits that happen. That freedom you feel, that autonomy is so important. Otherwise, you find a collection of these very, very difficult situations. And when expectations are unreasonable, to your point, Asra, because a lot of it is expectation setting as well. What would be those due diligence things? If you could think of one or two things that, when you're looking at somebody compatible, what are a couple of things that come to mind for you that you think that really would be helpful for this person to consider as they are looking for that partner, because that could just make things so much easier?
Yes. So you've got the standard stuff that we look at, just compatibility, similarities, things that you can communicate with. You know, you hear that all, but I tell you what, talking about emotional insecurities, we call it attachment. And again, we could spend another whole session on it, but
Oh, you're coming back to my podcast in a few months. We'll continue talking about marital strain. We have so
yes,
much.
because I think it is such a key factor. It fits into the level of emotional intelligence. Okay. I'm noticing it so much more now. It's so important to check out not only yourself, where you are in your emotional growth. Are you insecure or secure? If you're insecure, look, there are ways to recognize and grow from that. But it's important to do that in order to be that partner. You will also want to see that in your potential partner. Where is he or she in their level of attachment? Are they secure or insecure? And pay attention to some of those behaviors so that you can get a sense of it. Remember, being insecure is not a bad thing. It's just you're noticing it and there's a place to grow from it. But you got to put in the work.
I love it. And I'll just add two things to it before we wrap up. You know, like you said, it's not a bad thing. So there are two elements of it. Are you aware of your insecurity? And are you willing to work on it? I think that is the game changer. Even if there's disparity in emotional maturity, is the partner owning it and wanting to work on it, or are they deflecting it and then projecting blame on the person? So that emotional maturity is one of the key factors. You have to see that emotional compatibility. And like you and I were talking about, that resume is not what you want. It's not a career match. A life
Yeah,
match has to do with emotional intelligence matching for the couple. So they
that
can
is
grow together. They're compatible in that space.
exactly. And so you and I can say this. Yes, we know the biodatas are there. Yeah, great. But there's so much more. It's so important that you see the couple in their emotional levels. I think that if the takeaway from this discussion is that that is key. That has got to be something that's a focus and important in the sustainability of a marriage.
I love it. And I'm going to close with that, with a lot of curiosity and suspense, because in future conversations, we're going to be talking about other kinds of marital strain, different kinds of divorces that people are experiencing, the distress around it, how to make sense of those big, big decisions. So I can't wait to discuss this more with you. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
Thank you. It's such an honor, Sheeza. This was a wonderful experience, and I'm on board with you because that's what it's about, to explore and to understand more, help each other in the ways that we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Keep listening, everyone, and we will keep coming back with marriage, and especially your questions around marriage, marital strain, and the very, very difficult decisions around divorce. Please remember to keep listening and watching as part of your weekly self-care and learning ritual. You know there are lots of commonalities in our lives, relationships, in our joys and struggles. And my hope is that this material will help you expand your perspective, give you some clarity on how to think about things, and ultimately make you feel better and sorted about your life and relationships. Hope you have a fulfilling and wholesome day.